I have been at the bedside of several relatives as they passed from this world to another. In most cases, there was no lifting of the veil between earth or heaven, and nothing more than a last breath. In the case of my dad, however, there was a spiritual experience that cannot be explained. They had been together for over 75 years and she had needed more care than he had for the last of those years. There was a strong bond, both physical and spiritual, in their relationship. I wrote this explanation of the experience and it was read at his funeral. I cannot explain it except in terms of a spiritual connection. Following is the text. I am sure many of you would like to know about my mother, Helen. She is at Oxford Glen Memory Care Center in Grand Prairie. The last few years of hospital stays and medical problems have withered away her body and her mind. My dad had taken responsibility for her care as his primary focus for these years, and when we returned from a doctor's visit he would ask about her health. His mind was good and he would hold her hand and kiss her cheek as he leaned between their two wheelchairs. Her thoughts are like butterflies fluttering by and then disappearing. She seldom can finish a question before it is gone, and is often frustrated. Her memories are only of many years ago as she calls out for Mother, James, and Mildred. Merlene, I, her grandchildren, and even Dad are just like the caregivers and residents. She likes to hold hands and anyone will do just fine. Over the weekend it became apparent that Dad was not going to last much longer and we made the decision that trying to tell of his passing would only upset her and then it would be gone. Her health would also be severely compromised by the trip to Forney for the funeral. So, on the Monday morning of this week, Chris, Tiffany, and I sat by Dad's bedside as he increasingly struggled to breathe. There were just the three of us and a hospice nurse in the room with a closed door. Mother was in the common area shuffling her chair around and trying to hold hands with anyone available and dozing off for short naps every few minutes. As the end neared, my girls leaned down to his good ear, and hoping to set him at ease said, "It's okay to go, Papa, we will take care of Granny, go in peace, and we will care for Granny." We waited for the last breath but it never came. The hospice nurse checked for a pulse and then left us alone with him as she went to inform the facility manager. No one had left the room until then, and no one knew of his passing. The facility manager came to the room as we stood around the bed and gave her condolences. She then asked, "Did they tell you what your mother said?" She had suddenly shouted out, "He's dead, he told me." The staff in the Commons area all stared in shock, not only for the complete sentence, but because they only knew that hospice and family were in the room, but nothing more. As he passed from this world, their spirits must have touched, and he gave a temporary goodbye. At that moment, she must have understood, and shouted out, "There is a thin line between this world and the next. I know that it will not be long before he calls Mother to join him. I will not be sad, I will just be lonely." She also passed away July 2, 2016. The funeral was also held in Forney at the Methodist Church with Pastor Arvil McLean holding the service. Again, I had made a video and written a eulogy showing their life in photos and words. Tiffany read the eulogy and some thoughts of her own. Kristen read their thoughts about Mom also. Following is a copy of this text. Written by Leslie Stark. Helen Marie Dozier Stark was born April 15, 1923 to Sam Dozier and mother, Beulah Howe Dozier. Sam had been formerly married and had 3 young children before wedding Beulah. Can I just call her Mama Doe? Mama Doe was young and inherited 3 stepchildren, but soon gave birth to 3 more of her own. Helen's siblings were Louis, Mildred, Bryce, James, and Joyce Evelyn. When you live a full life, you will experience loss of family and friends. In her years at home, she lost older brother Bryce to problems from curvature of the spine, and her younger sister Joyce Evelyn to heart problems. Later in life she would suffer the loss of her second son Rod, a special grandchild Brandy, and her husband of 75 years Ollie. Those early years were those of a farm girl, growing up on a cotton farm. She would pick the peas from the garden, can the vegetables with a pressure cooker, wring the chicken's neck and pluck the feathers. When absolutely necessary the girls would go to the field and help hoe weeds and pick cotton. She told me about the big red centipedes that would crawl up your arm while bending down and plucking the bolls from the black land cotton. The Dozier kids started grade school in a red brick schoolhouse, built down the road about a quarter of a mile from their house. Later, they would attend public school in Forney. Mother was a cheerleader for the ball team and probably cut a wide swath with her big smile and good looks. She would upon occasion talk about some man there in Forney and say, "I used to date him sometimes." My dad would often say that those good looks and generous proportions were what first attracted him. After high school, my dad decided to attend a business college in Dallas as he had expectations of leaving rural life for the business world. There he met James Dozier from Forney and they became close friends. As those things go, James introduced Dad to his younger sister Helen, and my existence and his future were set in motion. They fell madly in love. Mother graduated high school, they were married, and 9 months later I came into this world. Thank you, Mom, love you Dad. Mom liked to tell that Daddy Doe, when asked for permission to marry, had stated, "Don't come running home every time you disagree, you are making your bed, learn to sleep in it." She did, and it lasted for more than 75 years. They were young, in love, and broke. They borrowed a car and honeymooned in East Texas at the home of a relative. We lived in Marshall, Texas while Dad worked with a defense contractor, lived with my Dozier grandparents in rural Forney, and finally bought a house in Forney across from the old Methodist church on Austin Street. Mother liked to tell us about the place we lived in Marshall. The price was right and it was a very large house with lots of rooms. Many people rented rooms there and some were rented only for a night. I can only remember the house in Forney which they purchased just as Dad was shipped out to Europe. Mother took in a boarder that was a young school teacher named Dixie. Having a friend her age to talk with, share expenses, and watch the kid, helped during her lonely war years of 1944 and 1945. I can remember wandering into her bedroom where she lay over the bed sobbing in loneliness. You couldn't FaceTime on the old hand crank, party line, wall phone, and letters took months to arrive from Germany. Here I am, just before Thanksgiving 2016, still going through the probate process for Mom and Dad. I am cleaning out the files brought back from Forney and stumbled on a handwritten page that someone wrote down to preserve facts that pertains to the previous paragraphs. I will write it down here just as on the tattered page. Helen from Forney. OV from Lawson. OV and a buddy drove to the county line, then walked the railroad track to Forney, visited girls at a cafe. OV met Helen one night when they both had dates and they swapped dates. Helen was 17 and OV was 20 and got permission from the judge because they both were under age 21. Married at Methodist Church in Forney located on Austin Street and Church Street. East Texas honeymoon, stayed with Uncle Tom and Aunt Gladys Hayes in Mount Pleasant. First car was an old Plymouth, so old and worn out his brother Erwin loaned them his car for their honeymoon. Lived with Helen's mom and dad in the living room that was fixed up as a small apartment. They first lived in Waco in a whorehouse and cops made up raid, then they moved to Mama Doe's. Funny, the things you remember about your mother. Of course, I remember the hugs and kisses, which were always there while doctoring the skinned knee with the always available monkey blood, or formerly known as mercurochrome. There was also Castoria, which was administered for problems with the stomach or bowels. I think this might also have been a cure for complaining, crying, and temper. These were a step up from the coal oil that Mama Doe slathered on every body part for every problem. Only a mother would scratch the little red chiggers from the hidden crevices of her little boy and slather calamine lotion on the heat rash. This was before air conditioning was standard equipment, and the best she had was a big fan. As I said, these were different times, and discipline was administered with a switch plucked from the backyard trees. I distinctly remember being dangled by one arm while the tiny switch was stinging my legs. That was better than the belt used by my dad. As you can tell, I am severely warped by the corporal punishment of the day. So much for crime and punishment. Rod was born in the 50s, and life for Mom was expanding from her farm girl background. She could socialize with the business people from Dallas or Denver, then make homemade ice cream for the 4th of July picnic in the pasture. Everyone loved her and she loved everyone. She loved to cook, and still reigned supreme for her chicken and dumplings and chocolate pie. Mom used no recipes unless you call a pinch of this, and a little of that, a recipe. She loved her friends, and loved to talk with her friends. These were friends from the Methodist Church, the American Legion Auxiliary, and just about anyone in Forney who she came in contact with. There were many good years as life became more comfortable and they built a new house next to best friends the McQuistians. Mom was always available to babysit, and for Merlene and me with 3 little girls, she was a savior. She set an example for the family, always honest, never lying, never bragging, and always loving. Mother was always there for my dad. I cannot remember ever overhearing a serious argument or a rising of voices toward each other in all their years. She was, however, jealous when it came to other women and my dad. I was told a story about their early years when visiting a roller skating rink. Dad decided to skate and she declined. On the floor he asked a young woman to pair skate with him for a few minutes. When he returned from the floor, he received a cold shoulder for the rest of the evening. I witnessed a little of this when he was in his 90s. I would certainly rather have a wife jealous of my attention than one who cared not. How could I have asked for more? A mother who cared for and loved me as a child, a mother that showed her grandchildren what a marriage and devotion should be like, a mother that gave me her presents for these last few years. Christmas 2016. Well, here we are at another year end and the Christmas season. It is the morning after Nana Camp and the grandkids are just waking up after a long afternoon and night of enjoying crafts and each other's company. Nana Camp is a tradition Merlene started when the grandkids were just preschoolers. She would gather crafts and treats for the kids to do and make small baskets of gifts, usually including matching pairs of pajamas. They would spend the day and night some day of the week before Christmas. Even though they are almost adults now, they don't want to give up this tradition. This is the first Christmas without Mom and Dad and I am feeling their absence. As usual, I started the morning by reviewing my friends' posts on Facebook. There was a posting of a song written by Mark Schultz entitled "Different Kind of Christmas." His words in the post express much of what I feel. This is a special song for me and my family. I wrote it with my wife after her dad passed away 3 years ago. It was our first Christmas without him, and Kate was decorating for the holidays. She came into the garage holding a box of ornaments and had tears streaming down her face. She said to me, "It's just a different kind of Christmas this year." At some point in our life, we will all lose someone that is close to us, and that first Christmas without them is a tough one to get through. I hope this song will bring comfort to those who are mourning the loss of someone this season. Please share it with someone who might need to hear it this year. Our family gathering in Forney for Christmas was also a tradition that lasted most of my life. Life goes on and things change, but I will cling to my memories, photos, and feelings of those days and hope that my family cherishes their wonderful roots.